You are listening to Mystery Media Group.
Yay! Keep your eyes and your heart open. Aliens are among us and are waiting to encounter you. Tonight, for episode 5, I am excited to discuss an alien conspiracy theory implying that our very own moon is in fact the remains of an ancient alien spacecraft or extraterrestrial satellite that accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, came to be in orbit around our Earth. The hollow moon hypothesis, or spaceship moon hypothesis, proposes that Earth's moon is either wholly hollow or otherwise contains a substantial interior space. No scientific evidence exists to support the idea. Seismic observations and other data collected since spacecraft began to orbit or land on the moon indicate it has a thin crust, extensive mantle, and a small, dense core, although overall it is much less dense than Earth. The hollow moon hypothesis is a suggestion that the moon is hollow, usually as a product of an alien civilization. It is often called the spaceship moon hypothesis and often corresponds with beliefs in UFOs or ancient astronauts. The suggestion of a hollow moon first appeared in science fiction when H.G. Wells wrote about a hollow moon in his book, The First Men in the Moon, in 1901. The concept of hollow planets was not new. Wells borrowed from earlier fictional works that described a hollow Earth, such as the 1741 novel Niels Klim's Underground Travels by Ludwig Holberg. Academic proposals for a hollow Earth predated that. Edmund Halley's hypothesis, advanced in 1692, was the first one to specify an actual void in the Earth. Greek mythology, with its Hades and early religious concepts of an underworld, such as the Christian hell, contributed to ideas of the Earth being hollow. It is now considered to be a fringe theory, though. It is often described in the media as a conspiracy theory. In 1970, Michael Vazin and Alexander Shcherbakov of what was then the Soviet Academy of Sciences advanced a hypothesis that the moon is a spaceship created by unknown beings. The article was entitled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" and was published in Sputnik, the Soviet equivalent of our U.S. Reader's Digest. Their hypothesis relies heavily on the suggestion that large lunar craters, generally assumed to be formed from meteor impact, are generally too shallow and have flat or even convex bottoms. They hypothesize that small meteors are making a cup-shaped depression in the rocky surface of the moon, while the larger meteors are drilling through a rocky layer and hitting an armored hull underneath. The authors references earlier speculation by astrophysicist Iosif Shklovsky, who suggested that the Martian moon Phobos was an artificial satellite and hollow. This then has since been shown to not be the case. Skeptical author Jason Calavatito points out that all of their evidence is circumstantial, and that in the 1960s, the atheistic Soviet Union promoted the ancient astronaut concept in an attempt to undermine the West's faith in religion. Between 1969 and 1977, seismometers installed on the moon by the Apollo missions recorded moonquakes. The moon was described as, quote, ringing like a bell during some of these quakes, specifically the shallow ones. This phrase was brought to popular attention in March of 1970 in an article in Popular Science. When Apollo 12 deliberately crashed the ascent stage of its lunar module onto the moon's surface, NASA reported that the moon rang like a bell for almost an hour, leading to arguments that it must indeed be hollow like a bell. Lunar seismology experiments since then have shown that the lunar body has shallow moonquakes that act differently from quakes on Earth due to differences in texture, type, and density of the planetary strata, but there is no evidence of any large empty cavity inside the moon's body. The fact that the moon is less dense than the Earth is advanced as support for it to be hollow. One explanation of this discrepancy is that the moon may have been formed by a giant impact which ejected some of the earlier Earth's upper crust into its orbit. The Earth's upper mantle and crust are less dense than its core. So in a lot of things that I read, It thought that it would be probably unlikely that an alien ship would have been able to come at the correct time to have these exact same physical properties as the Earth and then have that be made into their spaceship. At Cornell University, Ask an Astronomer, run by volunteers in the astronomy department, answered the question, can we prove that the moon isn't hollow? There, physicist Suniti Karanatale suggests that there are at least two ways to determine the distribution of mass within a body. One involves the moment of inertia parameter, and the other involves seismic observations. In the case of the former, the scientist points out that the moment of inertia parameter indicates that the core of the moon is both dense and small, with the rest of the moon consisting of a material with nearly constant density. As for the latter, he notes that the moon is the only planetary body besides Earth on which extensive seismic observations have been made. These observations have constrained the thickness of the moon's crust, mantle, and core, suggesting that it could not be hollow. Mainstream scientific opinion on the internal structure of the moon overwhelmingly supports a solid internal structure with a thin crust, an intensive mantle, and a smaller, denser core. So, unfortunately, for those of us who want to believe, our moon is not alien in nature, as scientific evidence has proved. However, I just love the very original idea of our moon being hollow, and as I watch the night sky each evening when our luminescent moon is hovering over me, I think about this theory and smile. Thanks for listening, and keep your eyes on the skies.
This is a production of Mystery Media Group.
Yay!